The notification on Dr. Valen Nixis's medical console pulsed an angry red, signaling what the system considered a biological impossibility. She stared at it, mandibles twitching with irritation. After 15 years as the leading xenobiologist at Concordia Medical Center, she'd grown weary of automated systems telling her what couldn't be done. "Override," she commanded, her multi-toned Cassiopean voice reverberating against the sterile walls. The holographic display before her flickered, revealing the genetic sequencing she'd been working on for nearly 3 lunar cycles. Human and Cassiopean DNA strands rotated side by side, their structures fundamentally alien to one another. One built on carbon, the other on silicon. One requiring oxygen, the other processing nitrogen. Different in every conceivable way, except for the small bridging sequence she'd engineered, glowing faintly between them. A soft chime announced a visitor. The laboratory doors parted to reveal Rhys Kavari, his tall human frame silhouetted against the corridor's blue lighting. Even after 8 years together, Valen felt a flutter in her secondary circulatory system at the sight of him. "The council has made their decision," Rhys said, his voice tight. He crossed to her workstation and placed a hand gently on her iridescent shoulder carapace. "They've denied our petition." Valen's inner eyelids flickered, the Cassiopean equivalent of a resigned sigh. "On what grounds this time?" "The same. Biological incompatibility presents insurmountable risks." They cited 37 previous failed attempts at cross-species gestation. "They've recommended we pursue mechanical surrogacy or abandon the project entirely." The words hit Valen like physical blows. Since the interstellar alliance had formed 50 years ago, mixed-species relationships had become increasingly common, but reproduction remained an unsolved challenge. Mechanical surrogacy, artificial wombs, worked in some cases, but the success rate was abysmal, and the resulting offspring often suffered developmental complications. "They haven't seen my latest work," Valen said, manipulating the holographic display to highlight the bridging sequence. "I've solved the mitochondrial rejection problem." Rhys leaned closer, his scientist's mind momentarily overriding his disappointment. That's remarkable, Vay. But will it be enough?" "It has to be." She closed the display with a gesture. "Because I've already implemented the procedure." Rhys froze. "What are you saying?" Valen's carapace shifted, the bioluminescent patterns beneath it pulsing with determination. "I'm saying that in approximately 8 standard months we will have a child. Our child. I'm carrying it now." "That's..." Rhys stammered, shock giving way to concern. "The council explicitly forbade..." "The council does not dictate what I do with my body," Valen interrupted. "I've run every simulation. I've accounted for every variable. It will work." "And if something goes wrong?" Rhys asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing will go wrong," she said with the certainty that had made her the foremost expert in her field. "I've spent my career being told what's impossible, what's incompatible, that our love is an interesting scientific anomaly, but ultimately futile. I refuse to accept that." Rhys pulled her into an embrace, careful of her delicate wing casings. "You magnificent, stubborn creature. You know they'll try to stop you when they find out." "Let them try," Valen replied, her secondary arms wrapping around his waist. "This child represents more than just us, Rhys. It represents possibility, hope, proof that the barriers between our species aren't as insurmountable as they believe." "It's dangerous," he said, but there was pride mixing with the worry in his voice. "Everything worthwhile is." Valen's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. "Besides, I've already notified Dr. Morazar. She's agreed to monitor the pregnancy in secret." Outside the laboratory window, the rings of Saturn gleamed against the void, a reminder of how far humanity had come, and how much farther all species could go together. If only they were brave enough to try the impossible. 3 months later, Valen hunched over the toilet in their apartment's waste extraction unit, her carapace radiating distress patterns as she purged her auxiliary stomach for the 3rd time that day. The medication isn't working, Reese observed, holding a cool cloth to the sensitive spot behind her mandibles. An understatement, Valen managed between heaves. But the morning sickness is actually a good sign. It means the embryo is successfully releasing human hormones that my body recognizes as foreign, exactly as I predicted. Dr. Eleanor Morizar reviewed the scan results in the adjacent room, her dark features arranged in professional concern. As one of the few human Cassiopean hybrid specialists in the system, she'd risked her medical license to help them. The embryonic sac is holding, she announced when Valen emerged, still shaky. I've never seen anything like it. You've created a sort of biological interface layer between your reproductive chamber and the embryo. The Mirazan technique, Valen explained, settling onto the examination platform. Modified, of course. The original process was developed for transplanting silicon-based organs into carbon-based hosts. Reese squeezed her upper hand. In plain standard, darling, not all of us have 5 doctoral degrees. I've essentially convinced my body that the embryo is a specialized organ rather than a foreign entity, Valen simplified. My immune system recognizes it as self, while the amniotic environment maintains human-compatible conditions. Ingenious, Eleanor murmured, studying the 3-dimensional projection of the developing embryo. Unmistakably human in its basic structure, yet with subtle alterations where Valen's genetic contributions had taken hold. But the Council's concerns weren't entirely without merit. The fetal development rate is accelerated compared to human norms. Expected, Valen said calmly. Cassiopean gestation is typically shorter. I've compensated with additional nutrient infusions. A sudden pounding at the door interrupted them. Eleanor hurriedly shut down the projection while Reese moved to answer. Medical enforcement, a stern voice announced. We have received reports of unauthorized xenobiological procedures at this residence. Valen's secondary heart nearly stopped. She exchanged alarmed glances with Eleanor. Delay them, Eleanor whispered to Reese. We need to hide the equipment. But it was too late. The door hissed open, revealing 4 enforcement officers, 2 human, 1 Arcturian, and 1 Vespid. Their leader, a severe-looking human woman with a shaved head, stepped forward. Dr. Valen Nixis, you are in violation of Council Directive 557B, prohibiting unsanctioned cross-species gestational experiments. You will come with us for immediate medical intervention. Under whose authority? Valen demanded instinctively, positioning her arms protectively over her abdomen. The officer presented a council authorization. The experiment ends now, Doctor, for your own safety. Reese moved between them. You can't do this. This isn't an experiment. This is our child. Stand aside, Mr. Kavari, the officer ordered. The council has been monitoring Dr. Nixis's research activities. We know exactly what she's done. Then you know I've solved the compatibility issues, Valen argued. The embryo is viable. Terminating now would be destroying groundbreaking scientific progress. And potentially saving your life, the Arcturian officer added, his tone gentler. All previous attempts resulted in maternal death. The council isn't being cruel. They're preventing a tragedy. Eleanor stepped forward. As her physician, I can attest that Dr. Nixis is in perfect health. The pregnancy is proceeding normally. Normal doesn't apply here, the lead officer countered. This procedure has never succeeded. You have 10 minutes to gather essentials before we transport you to medical containment. As the officers withdrew to the corridor to allow them privacy, Reese turned to Valen, panic evident in his eyes. We need to run, he whispered urgently. Valen's mandibles clicked in determination. No, running would only confirm their fears. We fight this legally and scientifically. I'll go with them, undergo their examinations, and prove this pregnancy can succeed. And if they force termination despite your objections? Valen's carapace darkened with resolve. They won't get the chance, trust me. The medical containment facility gleamed with antiseptic perfection, its curved white walls and blue ambient lighting designed to soothe patients. Valen found it anything but comforting as she lay on the examination platform, surrounded by the Xenobiological Ethics Committee, 7 solemn faces representing the major alliance species. Your vital signs are remarkably stable, admitted Dr. Keswick, a vespid with vibrant purple compound eyes. He studied the monitors with obvious scientific curiosity, despite his official opposition to her pregnancy. As I've been telling you for the past week, Valen replied evenly. The adaptive membrane technology is working precisely as designed. The committee's chair, a silver-haired human named Dr. O'Torry, frowned. Stable for now, Dr. Nixis, but our predictive models show a 93% probability of catastrophic immune rejection by week 20. Your models are based on outdated understanding of Cassiopean biology, Valen countered, and they, don't account for my modifications. Reese stood at her side, having refused to leave despite multiple attempts by security to remove him. His legal status as her bonded partner had ultimately forced them to relent. Perhaps we should consider the ethical implications of continuing this pregnancy, suggested Telemos, the Arcturian bioethicist. Even if the mother survives, what kind of life would such a hybrid child face? No precedent exists for their psychological development. Valen's patience, already thin after a week of confinement, finally snapped. Her carapace flashed bright patterns of irritation. Enough, she said, her multi-toned voice resonating with authority. You claim to act from scientific caution, but I see only fear of the unknown masquerading as ethical concern. She painfully pulled herself upright, disconnecting monitoring devices despite the medical staff's protests. Dr. Nixis, please remain calm, Dr. O'Torry urged. I am perfectly calm, Valen responded, but I will no longer submit to being treated as a reckless subject rather than the foremost expert in xenobiological compatibility in this facility, possibly in this solar system. She activated her personal console, projecting a holographic display for all to see. These are daily cellular scans of the embryo and surrounding tissue. Note the interface layer, not breaking down, not failing, but actually strengthening as the pregnancy progresses. The committee members leaned forward despite themselves, scientific curiosity temporarily overriding their objections. Furthermore, Valen continued, the fetal development is proceeding at exactly the adjusted rate I calculated. Brain activity, organ formation, limb development, all progressing normally within human parameters. Remarkable, whispered Dr. Keswick. I'm not asking for your approval, Valen said firmly. I'm demanding my rights as a sentient being to bodily autonomy, rights guaranteed by Alliance Charter Section 12, Paragraph 5. You cannot legally force me to terminate this pregnancy without proving immediate life-threatening danger. Which they cannot do, Reese added, because all evidence shows the opposite. The silence that followed was broken by the arrival of an unexpected ally, Dr. Eleanor Morizar, accompanied by a tall, distinguished Meridian in formal diplomatic attire. Committee members, the Meridian announced, their voice melodious and commanding. I am Ambassador Thrill, representing the Cassiopean Collective. We have received word that one of our citizens is being held against her will and subjected to medical discrimination. Dr. O'Torry rose quickly. Ambassador, this is strictly a medical matter. A medical matter involving groundbreaking science that could benefit multiple species, Ambassador Thrill interrupted smoothly. The collective views Dr. Nixis's work as vital to interspecies relations. Any attempt to terminate this pregnancy without her consent will be considered a serious diplomatic incident. The committee members exchanged alarmed glances. Medical containment was one thing. Triggering an interstellar diplomatic crisis was quite another. Valen's inner eyelids blinked in surprise. The Cassiopean government had never shown interest in her work before. The collective supports this research? She asked the ambassador quietly. The collective supports progress, Ambassador Thrill replied with a subtle antenna twitch that, in Cassiopean culture, indicated personal approval, rather than mere political positioning. And in times of fear, sometimes progress requires protection. Sensing the shifting dynamics, Dr. Keswick spoke up. Perhaps we have been overly cautious. I propose daily monitoring with Dr. Nixis's continued cooperation, but without containment. Absolutely not, Dr. O'Torry began, but found himself increasingly isolated as other committee members nodded thoughtfully. "We'll establish a compromise protocol," Telemaz suggested. "Regular monitoring, emergency contingencies, but with Dr. Nixis's full rights respected." As the committee dissolved into debate, Reese leaned close to Valen. "Did you know the ambassador would come?" "No," she admitted, mandibles clicking softly in amusement. "But I did send my research to the collective science ministry last month. It seems someone was paying attention." For the first time in weeks, hope flickered, not just in her secondary heart, but in her primary one as well. "Push the display closer," Valen instructed, adjusting her position on the lounge chair that had become her primary residence in recent weeks. At 5 months pregnant, her normally sleek exoskeleton had developed specialized expansion joints that creaked uncomfortably when she moved. Reese obliged, shifting the holographic projection so she could see without straining. The three-dimensional image showed their developing child floating in its specialized amniotic environment within her. "The fingers are moving," Reese whispered in awe. "Look, they're actually making a fist." "Neurological development right on schedule," Valen noted. Both the scientist and mother in her deeply satisfied. "And the bone density has improved since the calcium supplement adjustments." The door chimed, admitting Dr. Maz and Dr. Morazar for their daily check-in. Since the confrontation with the ethics committee 2 months earlier, an uneasy truce had formed. Valen had agreed to regular monitoring in exchange for being allowed to continue the pregnancy under home supervision. "Your hormone levels have stabilized," Dr. Morazar announced after reviewing the latest data. "The modified progesterone is finally integrating properly with your system." Telemaz, once their opponent on the committee, had become an unexpected ally. The Arcturian moved gracefully to the monitoring equipment. "The public attention has been beneficial to our cause. 3 scientific journals have requested preliminary papers on the adaptive membrane technology." Valen clicked her mandibles in satisfaction. After news of her pregnancy had leaked, strategically, through Ambassador Thrill's office, the scientific community had split between those horrified by the reckless experiment and those fascinated by its implications. "The membrane is the key innovation," Valen explained, highlighting the specialized tissue layer on the display. "It functions as a biological translator, converting nutrients from my system into forms the human fetus can absorb, while filtering out potentially toxic elements. And preventing rejection," Reese added, "by essentially cloaking the embryo's foreign nature from Valen's immune system." "The applications extend far beyond reproduction," Tella noted, her scientific enthusiasm evident. "Organ transplantation, between incompatible species, treatment for autoimmune disorders." A sharp pain interrupted the discussion, causing Valen to gasp. Her carapace flashed warning patterns involuntarily. "What's happening?" Reese demanded, instantly alert. Dr. Morazar moved quickly to the monitors. "Contractions in the primary chamber, not labor. More like Braxton Hicks contractions in humans. Practice contractions." "Too early," Valen managed through the discomfort. "Only 5 months, should occur closer to 7 in my adjusted timeline." "Your body is adapting to the fetal growth rate," Dr. Morazar explained as she administered a mild muscle relaxant. "The human elements of the pregnancy are influencing your Cassiopean physiology. It's remarkable, you're both changing to accommodate each other." As the pain subsided, Valen's scientific curiosity replaced her momentary fear. "Scan the membrane interface again. I need to see the cellular interaction." The enhanced scan revealed something unexpected. Tendrils of Cassiopean tissue growing into the amniotic sac, not as an invasion, but as supporting structures. "This wasn't in my design," Valen whispered, astonished. "My body is innovating, creating new biological solutions I didn't program." "Life finds a way," Reese said softly, quoting an ancient human saying. Tella's compound eyes widened. "This challenges everything we thought we knew about biological incompatibility. Your bodies aren't just tolerating each other, they're collaborating." Later that evening, after the doctors had departed and Reese had finally succumbed to exhaustion in the chair beside her, Valen remained awake, watching the subtle movements of the child within her. A small foot pressed against her internal chamber, wall. A strange alien sensation that nonetheless filled her with profound connection. This tiny being was neither fully human nor Cassiopean, but something new. Something that carried the future in its very cells. "They said you were impossible," she whispered to her unborn child, her specialized finger appendage gently tracing, the outline of the small foot visible through the monitoring display. "But impossible just means no one has been stubborn enough to make it happen yet." Outside their apartment windows, the lights of Concordia Station glittered against the backdrop of Saturn's rings. Somewhere among those lights, the ethics committee still debated, critics still warned of disaster, and supporters rallied for the right to reproductive freedom across species barriers. But here, in the quiet glow of the monitoring equipment, something miraculous was happening. Something that would change everything. Respiratory distress. Blood oxygen falling. Dr. Morazar announced, her voice tight with professional restraint that couldn't quite mask her concern. Fetal heartbeat. Irregular. The medical emergency had struck without warning in Valen's 7th month. One moment she had been reviewing research data. The next, she was on the floor, her carapace flashing emergency patterns as pain seared through her abdomen. Now, in the high-security medical wing that had been prepared for exactly this scenario, monitors screamed warnings as a team of specialists worked frantically around her. "The committee was right," Dr. Otori said grimly from the observation deck above. "The pregnancy has become toxic. We need to terminate immediately to save the mother." "No," Valen gasped, fighting against the biomedical restraints that kept her secure on the surgical platform. "The child can survive. Premature extraction possible." "My research showed." "Your research didn't predict this level of hormonal cascade," Keswick interrupted, compound eyes rapidly assessing multiple data feeds. "The membrane is rupturing." Reese pushed his way through the medical team to Valen's side. "There must be something we can do. Some way to repair the membrane." "Not enough time," Dr. Morazar said, administering another stabilizing agent that seemed to have minimal effect. "We're losing both of them. Through waves of pain, unlike anything she'd experienced in her 142 years of life, Valen forced her scientific mind to focus. The membrane was failing. Her groundbreaking creation, the biological interface that had sustained this impossible pregnancy for 7 months, was breaking down under the strain of accelerated late-term development. "My secondary circulatory system," she managed, mandibles clicking erratically with the effort of speaking. "Redirect into the primary chamber. That would flood your reproductive system with nitrogen-rich hemolymph," Keswick objected. "It could kill the fetus instantly." "Not if synchronized with oxygen infusion," Valen insisted. "The dual circulation will stabilize the membrane long enough for extraction." Telemaz, who had been analyzing the cellular breakdown patterns, looked up sharply. "She's right. The nitrogen compounds in her secondary system contain the same base elements as the original membrane structure. It could reinforce the failing sections. Or kill them both more quickly," Dr. Otori countered from above. My choice," Valen rasped, fixed gaze challenging the committee chairman. Dr. Morazar hesitated only briefly before turning to Reese. "As her legal partner, you need to authorize this procedure. It's experimental, dangerous, and not approved by medical protocol." Reese's face was ashen, torn between the terrible choices before him. Will it give the baby a chance to survive? Theoretically, Keswick admitted. And Valen? No one answered immediately, which was answer enough. Reese leaned down, pressing his forehead against the smooth surface of Valen's head carapace in the intimate gesture they had shared countless times. "You brilliant, stubborn creature," he whispered. "You promised me you wouldn't leave." "Not planning to," she replied, her multi-toned voice barely audible. "Trust the science. Trust me." With a shuddering breath, Reese straightened and faced the medical team. "Do it. Follow her instructions exactly." The procedure was radical even by xenobiological standards. redirecting Valen's secondary circulatory system, evolved over millions of years to support her wings and exoskeleton, into her reproductive chamber, while simultaneously flooding the amniotic environment with oxygen-rich human-compatible plasma. For several agonizing minutes, nothing seemed to change. Valen's vital signs continued to deteriorate. The fetal heartbeat wavered dangerously. Then, almost imperceptibly, the membrane began to stabilize. The specialized tissue, bathed in the unique chemical cocktail Valen had designed, started to regenerate. "It's working," Tella breathed, compound eyes fixed on the microscopic feed. "The cells are reknitting themselves. Fetal vitals improving," Keswick confirmed. "But maternal system still critical. The strain on her primary heart is too great. Dr. Morizar made a swift decision. "Prepare for emergency extraction. The membrane is stable enough now to attempt delivery." "Too soon," Dr. Otori objected. "Either we extract now or lose both," Dr. Morizar countered, already preparing the specialized surgical tools designed specifically for Cassiopean physiology. The extraction procedure lasted 3 hours, an eternity of delicate work to navigate the hybrid environment Valen's body had created. When they finally breached the reinforced membrane and lifted the tiny figure from within, the room fell silent. The infant was small, smaller than a full-term human baby, with delicate limbs and fine, almost translucent skin that held a subtle iridescence reminiscent of Valen's carapace. Its eyes, when they briefly fluttered open, had the distinctive compound structure of Cassiopeans, but with human-like irises. "Respiratory function initiating," Keswick announced as the newborn took its first shuddering breath. "Heart rate stabilizing," but on the surgical platform, Valen's vital signs were fading. "She's going into systemic shock," Dr. Morizar reported urgently. The strain was too much. "No," Reese said fiercely, still clutching Valen's upper hand. "After all this, you don't get to leave us, do you hear me, Vay? Your child needs you, I need you." As if in response, Valen's carapace gave one weak flash of light, the Cassiopean equivalent of a heartbeat, barely visible but unmistakably present. Sunlight filtered through the curved windows of the recovery suite, casting rainbow patterns across the floor as it passed through Valen's semi-transparent wing casings. Propped up on cushions specially designed for her exoskeleton, she watched as Reese gently rocked their daughter, Lyra, in his arms. 3 months had passed since the emergency extraction. 3 months of Valen's slow recovery from the brink of death, and of Lyra's equally tenuous first weeks of life in a specialized incubation chamber. "Dr. Morizar says her lung capacity has increased another 12%, Reese reported, carefully adjusting the special breathing apparatus that supplemented Lyra's oxygen intake. "She might not need the assistive ventilation by her first birthday." "Sooner," Valen predicted, her multi-toned voice still weaker than before but gaining strength daily. "Her adaptive capabilities exceed our projections. Look at the pigmentation changes." Indeed, Lyra's skin had developed a more pronounced iridescent quality in recent weeks, subtle patterns of bioluminescence appearing when she was happy or excited, a distinctly Cassiopean trait expressed through her predominantly human physiology. The door chimed softly before admitting Ambassador Thrill and, surprisingly, Dr. Otori, the unlikely pair who had become regular visitors during Lyra's first months. "The test results are in," Dr. Otori announced without preamble, his earlier opposition replaced by scientific fascination. "Lyra's genetic stability has been confirmed. The hybrid chromosomes show no signs of degradation or rejection." Ambassador Thrill's antennae quivered with barely contained excitement. "The Cassiopean Science Ministry has officially recognized your achievement, Dr. Nixis. They're calling it the single most significant breakthrough in xenobiological compatibility since first contact." "And the Ethics Committee?" Valen asked, already knowing the answer from Otori's presence. "Unanimously voted to establish new protocols for cross-species reproduction based on your research," he confirmed. 3 other couples have already begun the screening process. Valen's inner eyelids blinked rapidly, the Cassiopean expression of deep emotion. What had begun as her personal quest had opened doors for others like them, couples caught between worlds, between biologies, between what was and what could be. "May I?" Ambassador Thrill asked, gesturing toward Lyra. Reese carefully transferred their daughter to the ambassador's forearms. Lyra studied the Cassiopean with curious eyes that somehow managed to capture the essence of both species, compound structures with depths that seemed entirely human. "She is the future," Thrill said softly, "not just of our species, but of all species. Proof that our differences need not divide us." Dr. Morazar entered, carrying the latest scan results. "Your secondary circulatory system has almost completely regenerated, Valen. Another month of therapy, and you should regain full flight capability." It was the best news they could have hoped for. During the critical procedure that saved Lyra's life, Valen had sacrificed parts of her secondary system, the circulatory network that powered her wings and regulated her exoskeleton. The doctors had warned she might never fly again. "Just in time for Lyra's naming ceremony," Reese said, smiling. The public celebration planned for the following month had become a symbol of hope throughout the Alliance, a formal recognition of Lyra's unique status as the first viable human Cassiopean child. Later, after their visitors had departed, Valen held Lyra against her carapace, feeling the tiny heartbeat synchronize with her own dual circulatory rhythms. The child instinctively responded to her mother's bioluminescent patterns, her own, skin glowing faintly in matching sequences. "They said you were impossible," Valen whispered, echoing the words she had spoken during those dark nights of her pregnancy. "They said no alien could carry a human child, until you proved them wrong," Reese finished, sitting beside them and gently touching the delicate ridge of Lyra's ear, human in shape, but with the slight iridescent quality of Cassiopean tissue. Outside their windows, Saturn's rings gleamed. In the distance, bands of ice and rock that had once seemed impassable barriers, now nothing more than beautiful ornaments in the sky. Beneath them, on Titan's engineered surface, the Concordia Medical Center was already constructing a new wing dedicated to interspecies reproductive medicine. With Valen named as its director, the impossible had become possible. The barriers between species had been proven more permeable than anyone had imagined. And in Valen's arms, a child who should never have existed, gurgled and reached up with tiny fingers toward the stars. "What barriers will you break, I wonder?" Valen mused, watching as Lyra's skin flickered with patterns of contentment, human emotions expressed through Cassiopean biology. "All of them," Reese said with absolute certainty. "After all, she's her mother's daughter." Valen's carapace glowed, with maternal pride, the pattern speaking louder than words ever could. Love, possibility, and the unbounded potential of a future where impossible was merely a challenge waiting to be overcome. In that moment, cradling the child that defied biology, medicine, and conventional wisdom, Valen knew with absolute certainty that they had changed the universe forever, one impossible heartbeat at a time. Andy.